Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our VIP subscribers and guests in the hall. And he says, trying to look at the camera wherever the camera is. Welcome to those of you who are joining us online this evening for this Telegraph event. I'm delighted to introduce you. We had a negotiation beforehand whether it should be Lord Archer of Weston-super-Mare, Geoffrey Archer, but he says just Geoffrey. So we're going to, with great pleasure of hearing all about his new book. But first of all, I'm just going to do a couple of little bits of housekeeping, which doesn't mean I'm going to hoover the hall and go round. But so my name is Peter Stamford. I'm one of the feature writers at the Telegraph. And what I need to tell particularly the people who are joining us online, it's a moment to put my glasses on, you can make the video full screen by clicking the square at the bottom right. I hope that makes sense to you. And also to say to you all, we've got pre-submitted questions from people already for this evening, but for any guests joining us in person, on your seat was a QR code. If you want to, if Geoffrey, well, he'll say lots of things that make you want to say things, but just click on the QR code and send them in, and they'll come through on this screen here, and obviously from online as well. So that is all our housekeeping. Let's get down to business. So, Geoffrey, this is the 7th William Warwick book of 8, I think. Obviously, we're not going to give it away, give the plot away, because everyone wants to know what's going to happen. But just set the scene for us. Get our juices flowing.
Well, right from the beginning, I decided that it would be a different rank in every book. And William would start as a constable in book number 1, Nothing Ventured, and he would then become a sergeant, then an inspector, then a chief inspector, then a superintendent, then a chief superintendent, and would he, in the final book, which is the one I'm writing at the moment, become Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police. I also decided that with each book would be a different subject. So the first one was art and antiques, the second one was drugs, the third one was murder, the fourth one was protocol, and on you went. So he always had a new rank and a new job. And so it worked out at 8 books rather than I plotted it at 8 books, because the 8 ranks from constable to commissioner, and does he make commissioner, was naturally 8 books. The other part of your question is harder to answer, because you have to have a brand new idea for each book in order to keep the reader interested. And I get so many people saying to me, Geoffrey, where do you get your ideas? That is, frankly, a God-given gift. There are a lot of good writers around. You're a very fine writer yourself, Peter. I've watched you over the years. But the combining writing and storytelling is something totally different, completely different. In this particular case, I came across a man called Willie Hartley, who I found fascinating because he'd lived in the same house in Buckingham for 500 years. His family went back. I can trace it to my grandfather, but he could go back 500 years. And the more I talked to him, and I went down to see this remarkable house. And one of the things he'd done, his family had done over the years, was collect letters, documents, the most amazing things. And he had letters from Thomas Jefferson, from Franklin, and from Adams. And I read one of these letters that said Jefferson had in France, when he was in Paris, written a Declaration of Independence. And it was somewhere, the Hartleys thought, that it had been sent to Mr. Hartley in 1752, and it had in it 2 clauses that were not in the final declaration. One on emancipation, one on the relationship with Great Britain. It is thought by historians that if that had been passed and it failed in Congress by one vote, there'd have been no civil war. So my brain started going in 100 directions. What can I do with this? You keep that in your mind because that's what's in my mind. So we opened the book with a brilliant young man who is a Hartley. But unlike his father, he didn't go to Eton and Oxford. And unlike his forebears, he didn't become a cabinet minister or a bishop. He broke all the rules and went to North London Collegiate Grammar School and then Imperial College, London. And he didn't go to either of those. He went to the city and made a fortune. So you know that immediately. This man exists, Mr. Hartley. And the Prime Minister, Tony Blair, calls for him. And he says, we're trying to close a £3 billion deal with the Saudi Arabians. This will bring vast employment to Britain. And if we get the deal, it'll go year on year and year, because they'll have all our equipment, etc., etc. And he gets the job of going out and doing the negotiations. He's told by the Foreign Office, quite rightly, someone will appear who says, I represent the minister. And he'll want his 10%. And 10% of 3 billion is 300 million. So he arrives in Saudi, and said person comes forward. They agree the deal, because they're going to stop the French, the Italians, Germans getting the deal. They agree the deal. And the Lebanese dealer says, let's go to a nightclub and celebrate. And he says, I thought you couldn't drink in this country, and you couldn't. No, there's a nightclub just outside on the outskirts. Everybody knows about, but and off they go to the nightclub. And our man, Mr. Hartley, witnesses a murder. And the Lebanese man says, for God's sake, get back to your hotel as quickly as you can. You were never here. Go away. So he does. And in the morning, he's arrested for the murder he witnessed, although he is totally innocent, because the Lebanese wants him out of the way. He's dealing with the French. So our man is in jail. That's when William Warwick appears. And William Warwick and Ross Hogan have to get him out of jail and have to sort the situation out. But there's a subplot. While he's in jail, the wicked Miles Faulkner discovers that Lady Hartley, his mother, is in possession of a Rembrandt. Now, what I want you to do, and I don't know if you can do this on television, I hope you can. If you've all got phones, I want you to get your phones out. I want you, if you've got a phone with you, please take it out. If you're at home, please take it out. Tap into your phone, and if you're near someone who hasn't got a phone, please show them. Tap into your phone, Jacob Wrestling with the Angel by Rembrandt. And you people on the television, please, as well. Jacob Wrestling with the Angel by Rembrandt. And when it comes up, could you please show it to anyone near you who hasn't got a phone? So I went to the leading dealer in the country on Dutch paintings, Johnny van Heften, because I love taking advice from experts. And I said, could there be a preliminary drawing for this painting, for the painting you've just seen? And I hope you've shown to that. Could there be a preliminary drawing? And he said, yes, there could. Unlikely, he did 12 preliminary drawings. It would have come to light. And if it had come to light, it would be worth £1 million. So my next call was for you who've read, for some of you who've read any of the other books, you will know that I have 2 police officers advising me. Chief Superintendent Johnny Sutherland, who was formerly head of the murder squad, and Michel Roycroft, Detective Sergeant Michel Roycroft, who was in the arts and antique shop. So I went to Michel and I said, "Have you ever arrested a forger?" "Oh, yes," she said. "I chased one for several years. Got him, and finally got him into jail." "Is he in jail now?" I said. "No, he's out, and we're friends." I am now going to introduce you to Detective Sergeant Michel Roycroft, formerly retired, of course. And I'm going to leave the... Up you come, Michel, you're first up. There she comes. Now, Michel is there, so I asked her if she would be kind enough to find the forger, because I knew I couldn't make my story work without a real forger. What did you do next?
Well, you asked for the best forger. You didn't ask just for any forger. Jeffrey always wants the best for his books because he does an incredible amount of research, even if it's just for sort of like one line or one sentence in the book. So I knew straight away the right person for the role, and after a bit of research, found Billy Mumford and phoned him. And he very gladly agreed to come and meet.
And you need to tell us how you knew Billy.
Well, I arrested Billy.
We'll come on to more in a moment.
You arrested Billy and put him in jail, and you very kindly, after he free man, came to see me, and I said to Billy, "Can you do this preliminary drawing by Rembrandt?" "Oh," he said, "not easy, Jeffrey." So I'm now going to bring on my forger. Will you welcome Billy Mumford? So I said to Billy, "Can you do it? Can you do me a Rembrandt?" How did you reply, Billy?
Difficult, sir. Difficult. It was a big ask, you know. It was for an artist to do a painting from a drawing is one thing, but for a forger to do a drawing from a painting, it's very difficult, because if you've got a drawing in front of you, the paint can move itself. But you know, if you're doing it in ink or charcoal or any other medium apart from paint, it's really unmerciful. It's a hard job.
So we're having a little technical problem here, but I think we're going to we'll swap to the microphone. So hold it close.
Right to your
Okay.
mouth.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes. So hope that answers the question. It was in art forgers' terms, it was almost bloody impossible. So, but it took a long time to do it, and I looked at I had to age the paper 500 years, and I looked at it for the painting for a very long time, images of it, and then one day I got up and did it in about 3/4 of an hour. But it took about 10 weeks to stare at it, you know, and that's it really. I wouldn't want to do it again.
So now you are going to see the result he brought to my home of a preliminary drawing by Rembrandt of the picture you've seen, Jacob wrestling with the angel.
There it is.
Wow. So I knew it could be done. And now I've got Lady Hartley with this fake on the wall, and she flogs it off, because she's a cunning woman. She flogs it off to Fletcher, the evil man, for £1 million. What's it worth, Billy?
30 million. So,
What's it worth?
what, this? What, this? Well, I don't know, about £1,000, I suppose.
£1,000. She flogs it off for £1 million. But, next twist. As I told you earlier, Jefferson wrote a copy of the Declaration of Independence, which would be worth 100 million. And Lady Hartley didn't know that, but Faulkner did. So I went back to Billy and said, can you do me a Declaration of Independence as if it had been written by Thomas Jefferson, and if an academic expert saw it, would they believe Thomas Jefferson had written it? Back to you, Billy.
Well, that's an even bigger ask than a Rembrandt. I mean, I'd be forging something that may or may not exist. It might be out there somewhere, but I first started off by trying to get Jefferson's hand. So I did a couple of sample letters and gave them to Geoffrey, and he looked at them very carefully, phoned one of his experts, and decided had enough faith in me to go ahead and do the project. Research is a great thing in my business, and I read everything I could, a massive volume, the letters of Jefferson, and I studied various scripts that he did, how he moved his hand, how certain letters curved and some were stilted. I won't bore you, but it took from start to finish about 4 months. And it wasn't helped by the fact I had to make a 500-year-old ink. Well, so I had to go back to the way ink was made then. And so I discovered that I had used it before in a couple of things, but I discovered that you get conkers, chestnuts, and you boil them up in distilled water. And anyway, I won't tell you the technical process, you'll be yawning. But the thing is, I made the ink, put it on some sample paper, and because it's organic, it goes on black and turns gradually brown. And that's what I wanted. It's a chemical process. And that's what I wanted. I saw it over the days age 100 years or more each time. So I thought, oh, that's all right. So then I started. Everything was right. I ordered the paper, and I aged the paper several times until I was happy with it. And then I started writing the Declaration in Jefferson's hand. And halfway through, about 5-6 weeks into writing the Declaration, I ran out of ink. Now, you can't make the same batch of ink because it's organic, so you don't get the same chestnuts or anything. So really, I had to rip up the first Declaration and start all over again with a larger quantity of ink. So apart from that, that's the story of the Declaration. It was a big job for me, and it's one of the most satisfying jobs I've had in 40 years of art forgery.
So you've seen the Rembrandt drawing, what's called a preliminary drawing. We're now going to show you, not quite, Jason, we're now going to show you Jefferson's handwritten Declaration of Independence, done by Billy, which, if it was real, would be worth 100 million and is out there somewhere. And Faulkner has just stolen it from Lady Hartley. We will now show you what took him 14 weeks. Well, perhaps you could hold it up for a moment, Jason, just a little higher, because people at the back are trying to take pictures of it.
And perhaps hold it to the camera for a minute as well, Jay. Sorry,
Yes,
I'm
very
treating you
good.
like you're a hostess on a TV programme. Anthea, just do a
Isn't
quick
that
turn.
amazing?
Now you're showing your age.
Absolutely amazing. So, that takes the story to there, Peter.
Yes.
And I am not going to tell you
No.
how it unravels. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Jason.
And well done, Billy.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So, there's our prelude. Billy, so much of what you said is so fascinating and raises so many other questions. I suppose the obvious one to ask is, how does one become a forger? Was it a career calling? How does it happen?
Well, I was broke, basically. Yeah, I got thrown out of art college because I was a complete fool and an idiot. I misused the time. And I had to find a way of earning a living. And I had no skills at all, really, you know. So I was thrown out on a Tuesday and sold my first forgery on the Saturday in Portobello Road Market. And I'd been doing that for 40 years, basically.
And what was the first one you forged?
A Renoir, a small Renoir, still life of apples.
How much?
I got 17 quid in the end.
Okay. That sounds good.
But I was off an American couple. It was pouring with rain. I was staying on a street corner in Portobello, and the American couple came up. They had matching Burberry raincoats. That's all I remember. And then I asked them 20 quid, and then they walked by and shook their heads. And then about half an hour later, they came back and looked at it again. And I was really worried by them because it was raining, and I thought the paint might run. You know, and
As it does with a Renoir.
yeah, yes. And in the end, they said, would I take 17 quid, which I did. And the average working wage for a man then was about 15, 17 pounds. So I thought, wow, you know. So I went over to the cafe over the road and had a cup of tea. And, you know, in cartoons, there's this light bulb moment. You know, you see this real light bulb. I had that light bulb. And I'm thinking, that's it, you know. And that was my career. And I did it for the next 40 years. And then I stayed in the shadows for 40 years. I didn't do really high-priced masters. Just stuff that was saleable. Not copies. I don't do copies at all. I do variations of the artist's work, pastiche.
Billy, can I just stop you there? Because that bit's very fascinating. But just before we get on to the copy forgery question, I should admit that I wrote the interview with these three in the Telegraph on Saturday, so I've heard bits of this before, and I've still got lots of questions. But just explain. So you then went on. You specialised in particular areas of art,
yes,
because for various reasons, which you'll explain.
Yes.
And then just tell us, you were selling them in other markets, and one of the questions that occurred to me, and I'm sure is occurring to you, is whether the people who bought them, or because some of them were being bought by dealers, whether they knew they were real. If someone said this is a Renoir and it's £17, even if you got a Burberry coat, you might think that's quite cheap. I mean, what was going on there?
Well, obviously the dealers knew, and I don't think members of the public who bought them were naive to think, as you say, Peter, you know. But there's always that chance when you buy art, or there's always that chance it might be worth something, you know. And there's that moral thing, isn't there? Who's more guilty? The forger who sells it from a market stall for, I don't know, 100 quid, which something is worth £25,000, say, or the dealer or the member of the public who comes along with a bit of knowledge and thinks, I know how much that's worth, you know? So they say, would you take 450 quid? and you say, oh, yes, please, you know, and they go off. So you're at your market stall, and when they're out of sight, you get another one out. Right. Or is it the person who bought it, who with this little knowledge goes, I've just made myself £25,000.
Because they think they've got one over on you.
Yes.
In that sense.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And now, forger, I mean, I'm not sure, you know, whenever anyone asks us what our job is, if you say my job is a forger. So when Billy first said that, I said, is it a copyist? Would that not be nicer? But you don't like the word copy.
No,
explain why. What's the difference?
Okay, it's a bit of a warped thinking, actually. In my head, copies tell more about the skill of the copyist than they do the original piece of art, okay? I didn't go into copies, which is an incredible discipline if you get it done right, but I didn't see any point, because I did it from a commercial point of view. I needed the money. So if you know where the Mona Lisa is, right, in the Louvre, you ain't going to buy it from a market stall, are you? You know, because it's there. And, you know, if you, a William Scott that's in the Tate, oh, I saw that in the Tate last week. You know, so that's the limitations commercially of being a copyist. And I really believe that they give nothing back to the art world. Now, it's all right for me to say, because I create, say, a Picasso. I don't copy Picasso, but I steal everything he does. The motives, the palette, the way he moves his paint about, you know, the patterns in the paint, the pigments, everything. But I create a new Picasso. So not only does, in my warped mind, does that give something to the back catalogue of the dead artist, it also gives somebody, cool, I've actually found a Picasso that I can't find, you know, online or in the reference books. So, you know, it makes it more saleable for me. That's why I don't do copies. You know.
When I met Billy before, I asked him what the tools of his trade were, and he told me camp coffee and Thai food tea, was it?
Yes, Thai food is most important, yeah.
But then you wouldn't tell me any more, so these are obviously secrets. Now, Billy, you said you did this for 40 years in the shadows.
Yes.
But Michelle has already hinted to us that the two of you bumped into each other, shall we say. How did that come about? So, actually, Billy started the story and Michelle take it up.
I don't know how you can describe bump.
Sorry.
Into.
Being polite, it's the Telegraph.
When you get sent to prison for 2 years, that's not a bump, is it, really? You know what I mean? In all seriousness, I worked in the shadows of the art world for 40 years, but because I ran out of auction rooms to put the stuff in, and I paint maybe 3 a week sometimes, because I physically run out of auction rooms in the UK and most of Europe, right? I had this problem, you know, art is a problem if you don't sell it, because it's a storage problem. You know, it's all right doing this, but where are you going to put it? So you put it in the garage, or you put it in the front room, and your wife moans at you. You know, you don't know what to do with it. So a guy came up to me and said, listen, I think you should sell your stuff on the internet. Now, I'm a Luddite. I'm a carrier pigeon man. I don't know anything about the internet at all. So I left it in this guy's hands. And so really, I stepped from the shadows into the light. And there was Michelle. And quite a few burly police officers. But that's Michelle's side of the story.
It makes you sound a bit like an angel then. But anyway, but explain when you appeared in this light. How did it come about, Michelle?
So we were notified by one of the big auction houses in London.
And who were you?
I was a detective on the Art and Antiques unit, which is a very small unit at Scotland Yard. I think I'd been there about 9 years. Fantastic team of officers, loved my job there. And we had built a good relationship with all the auction houses in London who regularly sort of collaborated with us. And I got a phone call one day from one of the experts who I'd worked with in the past. And he said, I think we've got a problem. We've sold some paintings that have sold for an awful lot of money. We think they're fake. Can you come down and have a chat with us? And sure enough, down I went with one of my colleagues. And there were 3 of Billy's, I think it was Hussein, Maqbul Hussein?
Hussein Raza.
Raza, yeah.
Yeah, I was doing Indian progressive art then, because it was the up-and-coming thing. People didn't know much about it, so it was a, you know, I saw it as a bit of a.
I think most of us aren't quite sure what it is anyway.
But you know, Billy was unlucky in that, exactly in the same way as you've described people that brought them from the market stall. The same thing would happen on eBay, is that people would look at that and think, well, this silly old fool doesn't know what he's got here. We think this is what it is. They were buying them for sort of like maybe 1,500, 2,000. And then this one particular guy took them to the auction house and they authenticated them. That's how good they were. They authenticated them, put them into an auction in Dubai. But then I think it was one of the artist's family, because the artist had died, hadn't he? And it was one of the family that said, I'm really sorry, my father didn't paint any of those. So they then came back cascading down to me. And that's where my investigation started. And we collaborated with eBay, and they gave us reams and reams of information in relation to all the paintings that had been sold by this one particular user on eBay. And we started to piece together a jigsaw of all the paintings that had sold not only in Europe, but in America, and basically like all around the world. So my job was then to identify as many paintings as possible and as many people that were involved in the conspiracy to sell them, which is what we did. So we had about a 9-10 month investigation prior to, and we were only a very small team. There's only 4 people on the art and antiques unit. And this was going to be a huge operation, coordinated, to go through all the front doors at exactly the same time. Billy lived some distance from London, so I had to go cap in hand to the bosses at Scotland Yard and say, look, I need a huge amount of officers to help me with this case. And so I think we've got people from the extradition squad, from the international unit, and I briefed them all the night before, and then we all set off at 4 o'clock in the morning, and then we all went through the front doors simultaneously. And I was Billy's arresting officer. And yeah, that's...
And where was it his front door, or was it somewhere else you found him?
No, so we went through the front door, and Billy's wife, Daphne, said, oh, he's left for work already, bearing in mind this is 6 a.m. in the morning. And you were a chef, weren't you?
Well, I must admit, it was a bit of it was a fake job. You know, it seems silly.
Yeah.
I actually had a fake job. Yeah, I paid the manager of this pub a certain amount of money each week, so I could actually have some credibility. You know, pay national insurance and income tax, which was alien to me. I didn't know how you joined the club, so I thought, you know, I'd better get a job. And I was actually there because some of the team were based, that sold the stuff were based there. But that's all. It's just it makes sense that a forger has a fake job, doesn't it?
And what did you say to Michelle when she said, do you actually say you're arrested or whatever?
Oh yes,
you
no,
say that,
absolutely.
yeah, you say that thing. And what did you say, Billy?
I said, I've been expecting you.
Yeah, he said,
I've been expecting you.
That was the reply to caution, was I've been expecting you.
You know, 40 years, you run out of rope, really, or run out of road. But
Billy, put the microphone near your mouth.
Nearer your mouth.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And you know, that's. I ask myself sometimes, if I hadn't got involved in the computer side of selling, would I still be? Well, I certainly wouldn't be sitting here tonight. You know, I don't think anyway. But I must say that Michelle, and this was the formation of our friendship, treated myself and my wife with impeccable manners, courtesy, and kindness during that. It's a very trying time. I don't know if you've ever been arrested, or any of you, but I wouldn't wish it on you. So, and that was the basis of our relationship and what it's come to now, I think.
And so the outcome was you went to court, and what happened?
Well, 2 years happened.
Okay.
I pleaded guilty, obviously.
Good.
It's a bit difficult when you've got about 30 Picassos in your flat, but if not to, you know.
So in the book, Billy plays a major part because I am in possession of a £100 million declaration. I'm in possession of £1 million, and Faulkner is dealing direct. And then Faulkner doesn't know the truth. He doesn't know it's a fake. Billy does. Faulkner doesn't. And that's when the whole thing explodes. And that's where we got an eye for an eye. So in reference to what you said earlier, Peter, I love talking to fascinating people. I love meeting fascinating people. And with each book, I've had the privilege of meeting the head of the drug squad, the head of the murder squad, the head of protocol, Diana's personal protocol officer, whoever it might be. And in this case, my researcher introduced me to the man I wanted, my forger. And that's how it came about. And I needed it. You may say, well, what do you need that for, Geoffrey? Just get on with the writing. You need it so that the reader believes it. I need the reader to say, my God, he's done the research. I believe this. Not, oh, it doesn't add up, Geoffrey.
So all of you sitting here this evening can attest that it does add up, because it's possible, and I hope people looking in online can see that as well. Michelle, I've just got to ask you, just moving briefly from that, Billy is part of this particular book, so you'll come across him in this particular book, An Eye for an Eye, for the first time. But you have been appearing in the William Warwick books from the start, under with your own surname,
yes,
but with a different Christian name. So
exactly.
Who are you in the books?
Well, I'm Jackie Roycroft. So you liked my name, didn't you? I banned Geoffrey from using my full name, but he then chose another name and used my surname. But I bumped into Geoffrey. I was doing an inquiry when I was on the Art and Antiques unit with a very famous dealer in Mayfair called Chris Beatles, who just happens to be
a friend of mine,
a very good friend of Geoffrey's. And I was in the gallery doing my inquiries, and Geoffrey bowls in, "Who are you?" I was like, "Oh." And I gave you my card, didn't I?
You did.
And it was about 5 years before I retired. And I don't actually know how you found out that I'd retired, but I got a phone call from you one day.
Very important you retired.
Yeah.
And the other one, with Johnny Sutherland, I went to a Christmas Carol concert, and he had a mental breakdown as head of the murder squad, one murder too many. And he's a very devout Christian. And he was reading the lesson in a carol concert not far from here. And I spoke to him afterwards and said, I'd love you to join the team, because of all the experience you've had going right through to becoming a chief superintendent, head of the murder squad. And he said, I'm not up to it, Geoffrey. I am not mentally recovered. And then a year later, he rang me up and said, I think I could do it now. And since then, I've had the two of them. So every book that comes up, they get it before anyone else. They read it first. And they say, well, you can't do that, Geoffrey. That would never work. But there's a way around it. You can do this. You could do that, but you can't do that. And so it will really please you, Michelle. A young detective sergeant in Chepstow came up last night and said, I love your books. And I said, any particular reason? And he said, I love the fact that everything is accurate.
Oh, that's
that
good.
when I turn the page, I won't say, oh, don't be stupid. It's because I've got these two remarkable people.
Because we've already said that.
To go through the book. To go through the book and make sure that everything is correct.
But you also drew on our stories as well, didn't you?
I'm so sorry.
You also drew on our stories from when we were in the police as well.
Oh, yes.
So one of the first things that Geoffrey asked me to do was write, you know, like a little mini essay on the cases that I dealt with when I was in the police, like the interesting ones. But you also wanted like the little silly things that had happened as well, didn't you?
But Michelle, as she said, is Jackie Roycroft in the book. Chief Superintendent Johnny Sullivan is William Warwick. And if he was sitting here tonight and we've done shows together, you would think he was William Warwick. Mm. And so I stole him and stole her and put them in the book because they're real. And the reader would think they're real.
So how does it feel, Michelle, to be stolen? What's it like working with this wonderful man here?
It's been an adventure. It's been a fantastic adventure. I'd loved seeing how the stories that I'd given Geoffrey about, things that had actually happened in my career. I loved seeing them come to life in the books. And sometimes you'd take one piece from one story or one incident that I'd dealt with and another one and sort of put them together and weave them into this amazing. So I thought, well, that's actually better than what happened. So I've loved it. And, you always listen to what myself and Johnny say. You always take it on board. And yeah, I think...
The sad thing for me is that in Michelle, I'm going to give you 2 examples now. You get hundreds of stories you can't use. Mm. I've desperately tried to use the day she chased after a car with an open roof, dived in the top, tried to arrest 2 men, because she is bone stupid. And another case where she was sent by her officers up to a front door for a drug dealer to knock on the door so that when they opened it, they saw a woman and left it open and they could come charging in. And Michelle told me one particularly stupid officer stood up. So when the door opened, they got the message. She was dragged inside and beaten up because of this idiot. Now, there's an example of 2 stories which I haven't been able to get into the book. You can't take a story and just plonk it. No. It has to work in the overall. So Michelle and Johnny have given me amazing stories, many of which I haven't been able to do.
I've got to ask you, what happened when you jumped in the open-top car?
Well, I grabbed the keys because they were trying to drive away. It was a drug stop and they were trying to escape.
So it worked?
It worked, yeah.
And were you hurt?
Not in that one. I was in the other one.
So that sounds bad.
Yeah. Well, he was trying to... because it was one of these outward opening doors, and that was the whole reason that they used me to go up and knock on the door, because the door opener wouldn't work on a door that opened upwards. And as he saw my colleague stand up, I saw his face, and he went to sort of slam the door, but I managed to get myself wedged in. And of course, all he could do was then drag me in and then shut the door. So of course, my colleagues then couldn't get in, and I was trapped in the flat with him. So that was a bit hairy.
Good story, and I was never able to use it.
Lots of good stories. Lots of good stories. We could talk for ages. Actually, Billy, your name is in the book as your own name, not changed at all. Does that cause you any difficulty, or did you wonder whether it was a good idea?
It hadn't occurred to me, but Geoffrey asked if he could use my name, and
good name.
Yeah, he's not really somebody who you say no to, and not only that, I hadn't been paid at the time. So oh, sorry. No, that's the answer. No.
Good answer. Listen, we've got some questions submitted already, and if you have any more, please. I can't see anyone reaching for their QR code, but do please do it. I keep looking at the ceiling. I should be looking at the camera, really, shouldn't I? So anyone sitting out there, I think we've got about 800, 1,000 people joining us. Do please connect with us. But we've got some that have been submitted already in advance. Geoffrey, the first one's for you. It's from Nigel online, so I hope you're watching, Nigel. When writing detective fiction, you know the expected outcome. So during the storytelling, how do you avoid bias and to stop yourself hiding or over-revealing information, and therefore keep your readers always in suspense? You're a brilliant storyteller. How do you do it?
I think the honest answer to that, Nigel, is I don't know. I never know how it will end. I don't think I ever know more than 3 pages ahead.
Gosh.
And the reason I say that is because I always feel if I know more than 3 pages ahead, you will know where I'm going. But if I don't know where I'm going, I can go on fooling you. I wrote a book once called First Among Equals, with 4 men who wanted to be Prime Minister. I swear to you, I did not know which one would be Prime Minister until the last page. And I've never had anyone say to me, I read that book, Geoffrey, and it was so obvious which one of them was going to become Prime Minister. If you don't know yourself, the reader can't know.
That's a good tip for any budding writers there. Billy, this is from Reese online. Hello, Reese. He wants to ask Billy, whose artwork was the most difficult to forge?
Well, everyone I've done.
You've done everyone. Who's the most difficult? Who was the hardest?
I think that, because it's everything else is within my knowledge and my technical ability, and but that really, you know, stretched me the most, and you know, I had to have a rest after it. But
you mean the Rembrandt?
Yeah, yeah. You shouldn't go. Somebody like me should not go anywhere near the masters. Rubens, Caravaggio, Van Eyck, Rembrandt. You're not. You know, it's beyond my abilities. That's why I'd never do another one. Never. Simple as that.
Actually, Billy, we've talked about you being sent to prison, but we haven't sort of ended the story. What are you doing now?
Well, I'm not doing 2 years, I know that. When I came out, and obviously I was never ever going to go back, so I started to do what I did for the previous 40 years, but legally. And now I work, people give me commissions for, and my wife vets all the commissions, because you know, the art world is full of crooks, scoundrels and scallywags. And you know, if I could write, I'd write a book about them. But you know, even some of the most prestigious galleries and dealers all started from somewhere, and when they started, maybe you know, things weren't the same as they are now. Anyway, but now I paint commissions, but I signed my name on the back of them, and then it occurred to me, well, people could put a false back on. If I had commissioned someone to do it, I would have put a false back on. So if I can do it, why don't they? And then my wife, who's the thinking part of our relationship, had the idea that I put my initials hidden in the paint. And I've always done that for the last 10 years. And yeah, so one thing I might say, since I've been a straight forger, if that's not a contradiction, you know, going straight, I'm usually broke, but that's cheap money not to have that knock on the door and go away, you know. That's it, really.
On that subject, one of the online audience who has simply described him or theirself or herself as C says, for Billy, are your pictures a good investment? I've bought 2 already.
All I can say is thank you, and yes, they're an incredibly good investment. and also, we've got a no refund policy. Yes, I would hope they would be, and I think during. I was discussing this with Michelle. I think during my time of forging illegally, I think the people who brought them most probably made more money out of one of my fakes than I did, eventually, you know? Because if one of my fake pictures from 40 years ago, you think how many hands that would have changed during that time. And everyone sells the picture for a profit. So I would say they're a good investment. and I'm open for inquiry as soon as this is finished.
OK, and Michelle, just in terms of finishing the stories that we started, you've retired from the Metropolitan Police now. And so when you're not working with Geoffrey, what are you still working? What are you doing now?
I am, yes. So I set myself up as a private investigator when I left, and before I left the police, I'd worked on a unit that brought me into contact with lots of famous people and their lawyers, and they'd all kept my number, and I now look after not only high-profile victims of crime, any victim of crime who needs my help to navigate the judicial system. I just make sure that the case runs smoothly, that the police are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and it allows the victim to, you know, they can contact me 24 hours a day, whereas with the police quite often, you know, their shifts dictate that they're not at work when the victim wants to answer a question, so they can ask me. And I just make sure that the case runs smoothly and, you know, that they can get on with their job. They're normally sort of like either famous or important people, and I just take all the stress away for them. So that's what I do.
OK, and I've got a question for you from online from GM. Very, very discreet, our questioners, about their details. What made you choose your profession, and what do you think were your strongest influences?
Well, in the police force? Well, so I'm from a tiny little fishing port called Lowestoft in Suffolk. And when I was 7, I was taken to the local police station on a school visit. And I can still picture her now. There's this amazing policewoman who took us round and showed us all sort of like the police station. And she said the best thing about her job was that she got to do something different every day. And it was like, you described your light bulb moment. It was the same for me. And that was it. From the age of 7, that was all I wanted to do. And I left home at 16 and became a police cadet, and then joined the real police at 18. Influence, that's a really interesting question. I think it was just my desire, and I know it's a cliche, I know it is, but you know, you join the police force because you want to do good and you want to make a difference. And I was always terribly nosy. I always wanted to know what was going on. And you know, the police force, you are actually at the hub of all of those things. And I had an amazing 33-year career, and you know, I look back on it very fondly.
Thank you. We've got a question here for Geoffrey. This is from Siram online. Hello, Siram. Would you be able to offer some insights into the process of writing? Who is your favourite character, the one you've most enjoyed developing? Well, that's just one of these things. Your most challenging character, the one you'd love to have a meal with. Which ones you find loathsome, would happily avoid? And actually, I should say, this person also says, thank you very much for the years of unmitigated pleasure that you provided us with. So if you could just answer one of those examples.
You
can do all of them if you want, obviously.
I think I fell in love with Mallory in Paths of Glory. The idea of a man in 1924 wanting to conquer Everest, and then all those years later finding his body 700 foot from the top and wondering if he did reach the top. Was he on the way down, or was he on the way up? And I read a book by Audrey Salkin called The Ambassadors, in which she said he was intensely in love with his wife, but he felt he had to conquer Cholamunga, goddess mother of the earth. So one woman killed him, and he was determined to reach the top and get back to his wife, and he never did. So I think that's my most heroic character. I confess I love Faulkner, and you're going to find something...
What, more than William Warwick?
Well, no, William Warwick, you said bad character. You said you wanted a bad character.
Well, you said love.
No, William, I think
you love a baddie.
I think he's... Well, my wife always says it's easier to write a baddie, and it's easier for the readers. I mean, you'd be surprised how many letters I get saying they like Faulkner and they like Ross Hogan because he's always causing trouble. So you pick your characters and you write them, and they're often based on real people, which is fun.
And do the real people always know?
No.
Not the bad ones,
No. There's a wicked woman in the Clifton Chronicles called Virginia, who's based on a friend of my wife's. And she still doesn't realise I've based it on her.
Well,
does your wife
now.
realise?
No.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Oh, well, we'll keep it to ourselves. Billy, this is David online, who's talking about the kind of fascination that people have with art forgeries. And he asks, will there always be, well, he's putting in brackets criminal, but will there always be criminal art forgers? I mean, you've obviously given up doing it in a criminal sense, but will there always be forgers?
Yes, I think maybe even more now, because a lot of expensive art is becoming digital. Now, I don't know anything about computers or digital stuff, but it must be a big opening for a new kind of art forger, a technical guy, you know, who can scan it and alter it and whatever they do. Rather, maybe I'm a dying breed, you know, an old guy sitting in a room, you know, 10, 12 hours a day with a box of oil paints. Maybe those days are gone, you know, and it's a new breed to come up. But yeah, I think so. I think there's... Might I just say one quick question about that?
You can,
when I was in Wandsworth prison, which I wouldn't recommend, you know, it doesn't score very highly on TripAdvisor, but the teacher of art there was getting married and was going on honeymoon. So the wing governor came along and asked me if I would take over her job for 2 weeks while she was away. Now, I'd never done any teaching, and or anything like that at all. I didn't know what to do. So, but I was most probably the only guy who, you know, had you know, that little bit of knowledge. So on the first day, one of the prison officers escorted me, and I looked through this little glass door, and there's about 12, 14 great big blokes in there, you know, and I thought, oh, here we go. So I put it off as long as I could to go in, and eventually the prison officer pushed me, nicely, but, and when I went in, I had half a speech like, oh, hello, my name's Billy, I'm here to blah, blah. And every one of them got up and clapped, because they knew. Yeah, it upsets me now, actually. Oh, and, yeah. So maybe out of Wandsworth came, that art class came another lot of new generation art forgers. That's a true story.
Excellent.
Thank you.
A final remark again from Margaret, who is, well, not again from Margaret, but again from our online audience. Margaret has written, and it's an appropriate one to finish with, really. Not a question, Geoffrey, a comment I'd like to pass on to you. When I interviewed you for a Society of Authors online event in April 2021, you talked about how you needed to live long enough to finish the William Warwick series. I'm glad to see you're nearly there. Congratulations on the latest instalment. I'm looking forward to the event. So I hope it's worked well for you, Margaret. Yes, so the eighth book is in preparation, is it now?
The eighth book I've now done. I start the first draft in Mallorca. It takes about 50 days. I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I work from 6 to 8, from 10 to 12, from 2 to 4, to 6 to 8, go to bed 9:30, 10, up again at 5:30. I can't concentrate for more than 2 hours, and I am a lark rather than an owl. And that normally takes 300 hours. And then I will have what I would call the third or fourth draft. I then return to England and have a month off, and then go back to Mallorca and go to the next draft. So as we sit here, this book comes out today, is in the shops today. I have done 7, possibly 8 drafts of the last William Warwick. And that will come out, we'll sit here a year today, with the final William Warwick. And I'll only tell you the subject, no more. I decided to take as a subject, and it worked beautifully in the movement of time, that William Warwick would be in charge of security at the Olympic Games. in 2012. Michelle has read it.
I have.
Is it good?
Very good indeed.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, I think that's the date for our diaries. So you're coming back here this time next year, and we'll discuss the novel, the title we don't know. So listen, ladies and gentlemen, listen. I must stop looking at the ceiling. Everybody online. Thank you again, all of you Telegraph subscribers, for joining us here this evening. Thank you for sending your questions in. A really big thank you to Billy, to Michelle, and to Geoffrey for speaking this evening.
And a big thank you from us. It's been a great pleasure. I did say when I came in with Peter, I said, tonight, you have to understand tonight, Peter, it'll be Michelle and it'll be Billy they want to talk to.
Well,
and I was right.
You were right, you were right. And it's been a brilliant combination of all of them. And if you want more of them, they're going to be on Good Morning Britain tomorrow morning. So tune into that. So, on behalf of the Telegraph, thank you all for joining us. Please keep your eye on the Telegraph Extras website for future events. Come along and join us here. I hope it's been a good evening for you. And also, please stay this evening and join us for some Laurent Perrier champagne downstairs. And nibbles, sorry, let's not forget the nibbles. And nibbles downstairs in the lobby restaurant, which is back down the stairs, where we've also got a little display of some of Billy's artworks there for you to see, as well as these two.
Which is for sale.
Which is for sale, Geoffrey's just told me. Very good. Listen, thank you all very, very much. And join me in a round of applause for our speakers.
Thank you. Thank you.